is a wonderful anime called Hidamari Sketch. It's about this girl named Yuno who attends art school along with her best friends Miyako, Sai, and Hiro, and whoever else is along for the ride. It doesn't matter. I love them all. Their fun conversations always put a huge smile on my face, and I just love getting enveloped in the warm, relaxing atmosphere that's partly thanks to the unique, pretty visuals and comfy soundtrack. No show makes me feel this good. Every episode has me loving life in a way I never thought I would. And it's gone. Just like that. I watched all of Hidamari Sketch, all 60 episodes, and now that it's over, I can barely remember anything that happened in it. It's a string of transient moments, every episode, one after the other, ad nauseum. A show to be enjoyed in the act of watching, not something that remains with you. And unlike K-On!, there are no hugely memorable moments or character arcs prior to the ending. But much like that show, it's like all the characters are slowly waltzing toward an inevitable conclusion, that being Sai and Hiro graduating. You know it's coming, it happens, and that's the impactful moment you'll remember. It's also the saddest moment, the biggest turning point, and also the end. Everything before it melted away into the darkest abyss of my memory, probably never to be thought of again. So why bother watching Hidamari Sketch when the fun is fleeting and the emptiness that follows is immense? I'll tell you why with one word. Catharsis. Catharsis is a concept relating to fiction and invites people to release emotions in accordance with something that happens in a story that touches them or relieves a deep inner desire. Basically, it's another general way of describing how art can emotionally impact people. However, despite what the word is typically applied to, I want you to keep in mind that when I use this word in relation to Hidamari Sketch, I'm not purely talking about this ending. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced people we love distancing themselves from us, and even if you haven't, surely you formed a connection with all the characters in the show at this point, so it hits hard from every angle. I believe all episodes in Hidamari Sketch are cathartic. Nothing really happens in any of them though, so how can this be the case? They always say there's enjoyment to be had in transience, but what makes the show's depiction of that theme special when it's invoked by the mere existence of life, something that's applicable to many other works? What's so special about observing the normal daily lives of these girls, to where it can call out an intense emotional response from me? If catharsis is supposed to come from memories, I can't remember shit about most things in my life. Not because I'm memory deficient, but because there's so much white noise it's impossible to sort through everything. Who cares about what I do when I wake up every morning, or what I think about every night before drifting off to sleep, or what random things me and my friends talk about? They're inherently forgettable, since they meld into this greater collective of all the times I've done the same thing. When I mull about doing my life duties every single day, it all coalesces into this one concept. Essentially, I lived today. There's more to this phrase day to day, of course, but there's no reason to remember anything trivial in the monotonous act of living, so it seems reasonable to boil it all down to a singular idea and move on. These concepts are summarized for my own convenience, and as a result are usually vague in their construction. A long time ago, I had a fever and stayed in bed most of the day. This is mostly useless information, but I know it happened. So when I watched that one episode of Yuno getting a fever, having this insane fever dream, how the things going on around her had a direct impact on the dream, and how she kept periodically waking up, occasionally to stuff like her phone ringing, it felt like I was able to re-experience that old memory, like this gap had been closed temporarily. The presentation definitely supports this feeling, with the visuals really making the episode feel like a fever, because even though getting sick is not exactly an enjoyable experience, I'm glad I got that fever, because it allowed me to have this connection to Yuno, and her crazy dreams and everything else going on with her. It's a gap that didn't need to be closed, and maybe not everything in the scene aligns with what I went through, but through the way it's presented in the show, I still find solace in this remembrance. In fact, it's because of the visuals that even the regular day-to-day activities, such as the girls getting together to have dinner, bring an unparalleled sense of nostalgic catharsis and transient fun. The use of minimalism and real-world objects give off a dreamlike feel. But even though the visuals are very artsy, nothing particularly stands out in Hidamari Sketch. Events are portrayed with a certain amount of abstraction, where you kind of have to fill in the blanks in what's happening, like how a character walking from the entrance to the living room might be represented by just footsteps on this imaginary plane. This eccentric style is never off-putting though, because the story is so simply relaxing that the presentation is more about keeping your brain active and engaged, while simultaneously lulling you into this state of nirvana, partially thanks to the upbeat yet comfortably ethereal music that often sounds like it would be a fitting accompaniment to remembering something in a daydream. And the way scenes are constructed often feel as if they're randomly pulling from this vague cloud of memories I have, and an equally vague sense of catharsis washes over me. This saddens me as much as it relieves me, because this revitalization of emotions is just as short-lived as when I originally felt them. Even now, the effects of this unfortunate rule relate to me. It's been a while since I watched this show, and the longer I wait, the harder it is to remember what I loved about it so much. So can I even say that it's one of my favorite anime anymore? I'm all for the idea that life is continuous and that we shouldn't feel depressed by this. I don't particularly like dwelling on things. But if there is such a thing as too many positive emotions, Hidamari's sketch must have made me cross that line at some point. Watching it must have made me feel too good, too comfortable. It filled too many gaps in my subconscious. It exudes too much sunshine. I want to carry that weight, but the mass Hidamari sketch dropped on me is like a mountain. I can't stop to glance at what I'm lifting or it'll crush me, but I want to look at it and make sure it's still the same, and I can't ever confirm this because this is the concept that stuck with me. I watched Hidamari sketch and loved it. There's little else I can remember, and even though I felt so much catharsis while watching the show, I'm feeling emptiness now in my mundane existence that will never be graced with the same experience as watching Hidamari's sketch for the first time. I can't just arbitrarily revisit it and expect to feel the same way about its cathartic brilliance. I wish my monotonous life was just as lovable as the way it's depicted in this show. In real life, there is no catharsis in the mundane act of living. Every emotion swirls around you and you have no idea what to feel in moments where nothing is transpiring. That's probably why catharsis as a concept existed in the first place. It was meant to provide a way for people to release emotions that were being bottled up, or to supply positive emotions to people who need it, seemingly implying it's necessary for us to feel strongly in order to survive, or at the very least stay sane. And I don't know whether I agree or disagree with this idea, but I can definitely see how someone might lose their mind repetitively living the same day over and over again. In this way though, it's a little weird how I love Hidamari's sketch, even though it seemingly embodies this inescapable mundanity. Pretty much every episode begins and ends the same way, with Yuno waking up and going to sleep respectively. This isn't because the show is underplaying everything that happens in between these things as just another day in the hell known as the life of Yuno, but rather because this is an anime about life. So naturally, it makes sense that Yuno occasionally goes through some mishaps or weird misunderstandings or funny encounters in this life that otherwise plays out like clockwork. It wouldn't be watchable otherwise. But despite these convenient, momentary lapses in the mundane, even Yuno has difficulties finding solace in the monotony of life. In fact, it's probably the most prominent struggle in the entire series. Because time is always moving forward, she wonders if what she's doing is what she truly wants, because she didn't have a concrete plan when deciding to attend art school. Worries crop up when she's confronted with the idea that she's not too far off from graduating, and has to pick a supplementary course, and even think about a career. All this monotony is comforting, but once the concept of the future hits you, some contempt for those simple, wasteful days might boil up. But it's once Yuno feels the warm embrace of her friend Miyako that everything makes sense. Yuno may not be able to subsist without her friends for love and support, and because she loves them as well, there's no such thing as wasting time when they're involved. That extra smile or laugh might carry her through another day. She just forgot this, because this new revelation that her life hasn't been fully planned out rushed in like a tidal wave, washing out all the unrelated, impractical memories, and she just honed in on figuring out what to do with her life. But she's never fully had this pinned down in the first place, and gets too caught up in thinking about it when she doesn't have the answers the way Sai and Hiro do. And it took Miyako's straightforward sincerity to remind Yuno that right now, she's here, not there, in the undefined future, whenever that comes. This simple gesture of chatting through the night, barely staying awake, is something that has far more meaning and catharsis attached than whatever arbitrary purpose Yuno might formulate for herself. What she cares about right now is Miyako, and the scene is no new development or realization, and there doesn't need to be a scene re-establishing this, because it's something that she just subconsciously knows. As for Miyako, she's just being herself, always there for Yuno as a hyperactive free spirit that does what she wants and always enjoys life in her weird ways. And because Miyako is the soul of the show manifested into a character, that soul being persisting through the endless humdrum of life through sheer force of creative will to bend reality in such a way where basically everything is entertaining, her carefree nature is perfect for offsetting Yuno's occasional stress, not only making their friendship incredibly believable, but also justifying every interaction they've ever had over the course of the series. It's precisely because the future is so undefined and the past so vague that maybe it's possible that this not always monotonous thing called life can be cathartic. Not because life being boring is somehow interesting, but that it's the only proof any of us have that we exist. We can't forget how we got here, of course, but what you choose to do is not dictated just by what you've done in the past, but by how you feel. There's nothing wrong with looking back at the past with disdain, or eagerly planning for your future, or the opposite emotions for those things. But by carving a clear path that could get completely muddled at any time, you could lose sight of what's right in front of you, making it harder to adjust to sudden changes around you. And in the case of Sai and Hiro's graduation, where Yuno knew it was coming, she could have missed opportunities where she could have brought the two more joy, instead of making them feel bad about the whole ordeal. Nothing lasts forever. You're inevitably going to end up somewhere, and if all you care about is your future, then what is there to care about in that future? Catharsis doesn't just come from a penultimate moment. It comes from everywhere and evolves in every direction. It's not that remembering certain pointless things in my life is nearly impossible, as if they've somehow disappeared, but that I've been so constantly building on these old emotions to better reflect my current self. Maybe it's not that a mountain was placed on me, but that I've been making a mountain this whole time, and it only took until I made it so high that I can barely see or care about what I originally felt, that I can appreciate the steps I took to get this far. And not only is this a reassurance that everything I've done was not for nothing, but it's also a reassurance that everything I feel matters. And so catharsis washes over me merely in the act of living, like usual. Life is a painting. It's art. And art is more often than not a spur-of-the-moment decision to create something. In order to make great art, people need feelings of any kind, the desire to be creative in specific instances, and unless I'm focused every time I decide to sit on my painter's stool, my painting will never be complete, at least not in a satisfactory way, especially if I'm too busy thinking about how cool the outcome will be. Currently, I'm just haphazardly sketching all over. It's not a good indication that the final product will be impressive, but it's fun, and I'll remember to savor every emotion behind my idiotic strokes, and I'll try not to forget even the most insignificant ones. Even if I do, I still have proof that my brush touched there once. It may just be a brushstroke, but it's also a template to inspire me to paint however and whatever I want, which might even include slathering a new coat of paint on it. And hey, maybe my skills might improve. Maybe the end result, in all its certainly messy glory, will fill me or other people with happiness. All I know is, right now, on my incremental journey to make my own masterpiece, thinking about that wonderful series I finished about a year ago called Hidamari Sketch, I'm feeling like sunshine.